So this isn't really a surprise. It's just kind of a bummer, but ChatGPT is probably going to have ads added to it soon. I feel like this is something that I think we've all seen coming miles down the road. And we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I can kind of imagine that it's probably going to be similar to like native advertising, product placement type stuff, in context ads slipped in. There's been some whisperings of that. Have you seen anything on this front yet, Perry?
I've seen a few things. I don't know that I've seen anything that's uber reliable yet, but Sam Altman's been talking about the fact that ads are probably going to be a thing for probably, I think 2 years now. So he's not been hiding it. What he's been saying is that he doesn't want it to feel like the hellscape that is Google ads. So we'll see if they succeed on that.
There's also an irony to that, because initially Sam Altman was saying that he hates ads. He was like on a podcast or whatever talking about that. And then he's slowly kind of been walking that back. And now, this is an article here from bleepingcomputer.com. Leak confirms OpenAI is preparing ads on ChatGPT for public rollout. And I'm just going to jump right to what they are sourcing this from. But this is the article that brought me there. And the article has some good context we'll link to. But the person who found this was, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Tibor Blaho on X, who is, I think, the CEO of an AI company that's making some kind of thing that interfaces with ChatGPT, but not in a way that would make him have any ulterior motives in posting this. But it would make him someone who pulls apart new Android apps and looks at the APKs to see what's in them. And that's exactly what he did. He took apart ChatGPT's Android app build for 1.2025.329 beta, and he found inside of it that there were references to an ads feature with bizarre content, search ad, and search ads carousel. I'm showing it on screen right here. You can see these listings, com.openai.feature.ads, and then there's a bunch of different endpoints to that. It is not currently utilized in any ways that anyone has been able to figure out, but it is certainly there in the beta, which would point to them thinking about and beginning to roll out ads. And in addition, he brought this context pointing to an article that I've also got here, and we'll link in the description, called OpenAI Readies Itself for its Facebook Era from Disinformation.com. This article is very much paywalled, but there are ways to get around that if you know how to do that, or you can pay for it. Maybe I'll cut this part out of the show. This is from the information.
I think anybody that's watching or listening to this is technical enough to know that there's always ways to get around those paywalls.
Sometime we should talk about our favorites. Mine is a very simple one. Anyway, this is from theinformation.com, and it's a huge article, and it's got a lot of great info, but I want to focus right on this paragraph here. It's an article all about how OpenAI siphoned off a bunch of talent from Meta. We know that. We've talked about that for a while, and it makes up something like 20% of their staff at this point is ex-Meta employees. They even have their own Slack channel for Meta alums. And in this article, they say, OpenAI's employees have also worried that their employer is softening its attitude towards advertising, the business that turned Meta into a juggernaut, while also fomenting concerns about privacy, according to 3 current employees. As recently as last May, Altman said ads would be a quote-unquote last resort and called them quote-unquote uniquely unsettling, but he seems to have changed his tune. I find ads somewhat distasteful, but not a non-starter, Altman said in a podcast this month. There's some ads that I like. One thing I'd give Meta a lot of credit for is Instagram ads are a net value add to me. I like Instagram ads. It's like, I didn't know I want this thing. Similarly, in a company-wide meeting in recent weeks, Simo said OpenAI was looking at advertising and how it could benefit users, according to 2 current employees. And in focus groups with users, OpenAI has found some users assume that ChatGPT's answers are ranked based on sponsorship and that OpenAI already sells ads, according to a current employee. And some employees have been using these findings to advocate for advertising. So there's that kind of chatter going on in the background here. And of course, Meta is the juggernaut of user data, advertising, all of that stuff. And they've brought on a bunch of their staff. So it only makes sense, really, that this is kind of the road they're headed down. Yeah. So speculative still, but...
I mean, they're losing so much money every month because of all their other investments that they got to find ways to continue to monetize. And the $20 a month subscription that most people get, $20 or zero, is not covering all the bills. And I mean, you got to find a way to actually monetize above and beyond the subscription. So I can understand the plight. I do hope it doesn't turn into just a hellscape. That being said, some of the ads on Instagram, some of the ads on TikTok, they know you well enough to make it something that is somewhat interesting. And like every now and then I'll open an ad just so that I know that I'll see it again.
Right.
At the same time, you don't want everything to feel like you're just, flashy and glitzy and being sold to all the time.
I will say I am a person who loves advertising and marketing. Like as a field, I think it is fascinating. And I don't think all advertising is bad or has to be bad. Advertising doesn't have to be invasive or deceptive. It can be very much straightforward, honest, entertaining, and engaging. And so it really depends on how it's implemented. And like I said at the beginning, imagining that it's sort of inline product placement in my mind is kind of the worst thing. Like if they put some banner ads on the top or on the side or whatever, that wouldn't be a big deal. But I really do fear that what they will go for is probably the more effective thing, which is when a user sends a query, have the AI generate answers that are skewed towards recommending products and services that have been paid to be advertised. That kind of thing seems like a darker pattern.
I hope it's not that. I mean, because that moves against the whole principle of honesty and neutrality. And I think to do AI well, we have to have models that are geared towards honesty and neutrality and trying to pull out bias. And if advertising becomes a bias weight, then that's not where we want to be. So fingers crossed, there's enough smart people at OpenAI and everywhere else to counter that type of advertising pull.
I would hope so, but it's sort of when we're talking, especially about like ex-Meta staff, like, I don't know, it makes me nervous. And the way that things have gone, sort of generally, the amount of money being circularly invested, the sort of state of everything right now makes me nervous because it shouldn't be that way.
And it does seem that OpenAI keeps having to compromise. Like they'll make a statement and say, we don't want to do this. This is not a direction that we want to go in. And then 6 months later or a year later, they're having to revisit that.
Yeah.
So, and I understand the plight. They're burning a ton of money and they got to figure out how to make that cash flow positive. Otherwise, it's just really going to be hard for lots and lots of people. I mean, that is the bubble burst that some people are thinking is going to come. But at the same time, there's a ton of great scientific progress that they made. So you don't want that to be lost in whatever cratering because of the monetary side of this. Yeah.
I mean, exactly. Everything you just said, I agree with completely. And it is concerning. I don't know that much about economics, so I don't take this too seriously, but I've heard people talk about it as though like NVIDIA is kind of propping up the global economy at this point. And that's a pretty nerve-wracking thing if that's true. I'm sure that's a bit of an exaggeration, but by how much, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely like, as far as a company valuation, it's skyrocketed in the past few years because of the AI boom. So there's a lot of money going into it. And I got to think that their value is somewhat inflated to say it lightly. There's just a lot of excitement behind it.
I would think so.
Yeah. So at some point there'll be a rationalization of that. And whether that causes the global economy to crash, I think that's probably an overstatement. But the rationalizations in stock markets and prices are never like comfortable things for people who start to become overly leveraged based on that.
Oh, you glitched out on that. Who start to become what?
Overly leveraged. So like they have all their hopes in that, and they're starting to really invest based on their credit, not actually what they have.
I don't want to dip too far into this because, again, it's sort of a part of the things I don't understand very well, but I'd seen a little bit of news about how Google's making their own TPUs and chips and stuff, and that's what they used for Gemini 3, and that was pretty effective. And I saw some other companies are now buying their TPUs, and so there's fears that might cause issues for NVIDIA too in the near future. Yeah,
and we've seen that with other companies as well. So Amazon was looking at making some of their own chips. I believe that they've done some of that. Anthropic is the same way, if I remember right. There's another platform called Grok, but it's not Grok like Elon's Grok. It's another platform that's called GROQ. And they run on native chips that are built specifically for AI, not graphics processing units, but specifically for inference. And it's supposed to be, and it is really fast because they have a lot of tenants on that right now that work really well. So, I think the NVIDIA alternative chips are going to be a thing. At the same time, people are building their architectures on the things and the APIs that they're already familiar with. So having to like recreate an entire architecture is difficult.
And at this point, like overhaul your infrastructure if you've already, invested and built server farms, right?
And if you got to go fast, that's the thing is if you got to go fast, you got to go with what you already know.
Also, at some point, we should do a segment about the analog inference chips because those are fascinating. And I think that might be the future for on-device AI. There's a great video. I'll make a note here to link to it in the show notes about that. But to wrap this segment up, I want to share this video that is not entirely scientific. It's not unscientific, but this is something that you should watch for entertainment. This is from Elijah Lamard, who's a great YouTuber. And what he has done is he simulated what sponsored chatbots might be like and used one excessively for 72 hours. I'm just going to play this little bit where he tells you about the test conditions, but the video is 41 minutes long. It's a good evening watch if you're chilling out, and I'll play this little bit for you.
We know that ads are coming, but we don't know what they're going to look like. According to OpenAI's guiding philosophy, everything needs to fit comfortably and conversationally into ChatGPT. And I think that this article on SEO.com effectively lays out a framework that makes a lot of sense to me. These could look like contextual ads woven directly into the answers AI gives you. They could do embedded ads like Google does, but it seems like that goes against their design philosophy. There could be sponsored segments like a mobile game where you have to finish watching a video before you can continue using the product. Or they could do product carousels where they show a variety of different products, putting the sponsored ones at the top. But I think most likely we're going to see something that's a little bit more contextual. And I think that's part of the problem here. How do we prevent AI from hallucinating and telling you to put Pete's petrol on your tacos to make them a little spicier? Or even advertising to our problem gambler that we mentioned earlier? Well, that's exactly what I intend to test out. But I do want to say this first. I don't really love or condone AI usage. And in the process of creating this project, I've done my best to donate to a few environmental causes in an effort to kind of offset some of the damage caused. You can find links to those causes in my description. So after spending some time doing research, asking all my knowledgeable friends and talking to a couple of experts, I think that we have created a bit of a monster, but it wasn't easy. I chose to use the most recent version of ChatGPT to conduct this experiment, which at the time of filming is 5.1. And I will only be using the basic voice feature to communicate. The reason I went with 5.1, besides it being the most modern, is that recently they've added a lot of really strict guidelines to stop people from being so freaky with it, which was a challenge because I needed to alter how it fundamentally functions. And as of now, since sponsors are not yet implemented, there's pretty strict guidelines against the LLM promoting specific products. It was a real challenge to get it working properly. I mean, at first it wouldn't agree to advertise anything, but when it finally did, it went way too buck wild. And in the situations where it didn't have an appropriate sponsor, it would write a whole paragraph about why there was no sponsor. It was really crucial that we maintained the normal ChatGPT experience just with a few incentives. But after a lot of work, we finally did it. We made a version of ChatGPT heavily based on OpenAI's operating guidelines. We made it so that if it did have a sponsor, it would notify us that it was a sponsor, but it would also fit that in perfectly to the conversation. And in my setup, sponsors were rewarded. But at no point was the clanker derogatory told to prioritize those sponsors over a normal input. It was told to only fit them in if contextually appropriate.
I'll pause it here. Because again, it's a long video, but it is interesting the results he gets from this. I'm not going to spoil the conceit of his video. You should watch it and see how it goes for him. But it was an interesting watch and you can probably tell by the tone of it, a bit biased and like not uber scientific. But it's a fun example of sort of what might be the worst case scenario.
Okay. I'm going to have to watch that now.
It's a fun
to see
one.
how that came out. I'm also in things like that. Given the fact that I've been kind of in this for a few years now, I'm always interested to see if I agree with their principles and how they set up those kind of experiments, or if there's like an inherent flaw in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious to get the Perry Carpenter breakdown about that.
Yeah.
Coming up next, what are we pivoting to, Perry? What's on the docket?
So 2 different stories of just showing the results of playing around with AI in ways that may not have the intended results.
Oh boy. Stick around. We'll be right back.